1, 2. We ready? 3 minutes. Well, I see a couple of folks coming in. Okay, sweetheart. Hi there, welcome. It's Burke, isn't it? Burke. If I got your name right? Your last name is Burke? I'm not losing it. Hi, Bob. You want to move, honey? Okay. Go whatever you need to do. Oh, the sister I used, who's dead now, but they were great friends, Mercy Center with the Aging. And this one was a huge help. Smart as a whip. She was head of the School of Nursing at St. John Fisher. Pardon me? No. Grandmother, mother. Well, here comes the judge. Let's get started. Well, good morning, everyone. We had about 60 watching during the week, and some, and so I am very grateful to all of you for coming. Rob had another funeral this morning, so he's at Transfiguration. He left a note and says hello to everyone. Thank all of you who are watching, joining by internet. My neighbor said, "How do I get in?" And I said, I'm the worst one to tell her what to do. Am I okay? Okay. Oh, whoa, watch out. Here we go. And I wanted to thank Jeff and his daughter, Nora. And for those of you who are back again, you're gluttons for punishment, but I'm grateful. I want to just thank God for another day of life and for all of you who are here, and pray for all of those you love. And each of you carries something that's not easy. And so we ask the Holy Spirit to be with all of us this morning. Before I launch into our second week today, and the gospel I want to deal with is the Transfiguration, I want to return to last week. I wanted to go back. I'm sorry Rob can't be here, but I wanted to go back to his sharing at the end of the lecture. It felt like we needed to continue that in some way. At least that's what message I got. Pardon me? Oh, he was making reference to the pain that the nation is going through now because of policies that are affecting some who are the least among us. And he shared that he received a letter from a friend that a priest wrote to his bishop talking about those issues. And it felt to me like it was an unanswered issue. And so I thought I'd take a few moments today because his comments reflect Lenten experiences. And that's what we're sharing, that we go through life with painful moments that we're calling Lenten experiences, but we've all known the positive and the resurrection experience. For me, your presence here is a resurrection. It's a gift. He, in his comments, sitting right in the back, reflect the Lenten experience of so many in our country these days. And the words he shared, as I thought about them, and as people have said to me since, were appropriate for Lent. And we can't ignore what he was saying, even if we agree or disagree with it. What he was saying was his truth. And so love and listening are essential. We cannot ignore the reality of what our nation is going through, nor can we ignore the freedom of those who see things differently than we do. But above all, we cannot ignore the teachings of Jesus. That is absolutely foundational. Here he comes. This is my boyfriend from my youth. The main thing is you're here. Thank you, Michael. I did. I dated younger men. Hi, sweetheart. That's a good one, Liz. Go to your room. His sister and I went to high school together, and we gave him a run for his money. When I had black hair, he said I used to whip it at him. And while I was reflecting on what Rob said last week, I want to recall a wonderful journalism teacher I had when I was a student at Mercy. Sister Florence, short, I'm sure she had red hair in her youth. And she advised those of us who were thinking of doing writing or working on the school newspaper to be aware of 5 W's when you write. And usually those 5 W's for a good journalist appear in the opening paragraph. You get the sense of the story to come by the opening paragraph. And the 5 W's in writing are who, what, where, when, and why. And those 5 should appear in the first paragraph. And Rob was trying to answer some of those W's with us that caused him great pain. And some here were sharing the what of like sexual abuse that caused their family great pain. But to be very honest with you, there is a struggle for all of us in public places, like pastors and preachers, because we value the concept of separation of church and state. It's part of our nation, separation of church and state. Any issue that causes us and others pain and suffering, usually the 5 W's are partly the reason. So one of the what's, for example, for me would be taking children out of school and deporting them. That's a painful W for me. That's a what. As we answer the W's that Sister Florence talked about, the most important and critical one that we need to add, a 6th W, is the Word of God. Who, what, where, when, why, the Word. A couple of weeks ago, I went to Mass at St. James, a little church that's close by, and the pastor is terribly conservative. But, and sometimes the ushers say to me, That was a sermon with too much fruit on the tree. So, and then one of the other ones always, when I get ready to go out, he'll say, "Do you got your keys?" Because one day I left them in church. But, but I went to church and Bishop Matano was saying the Mass. And I thought, oh, sweet Mary and Joseph. And the sermon was way too long, but he was kind and he was clear. And I was amazed in the midst of his sermon when he shared a letter from the Ukrainian bishops to the bishops of the United States about the pain that the people in the Ukraine are going through. And he spoke about how we needed to be aware of that pain and do what we can do. Now, some might see that as a violation of church and state. I thought it was a moment of grace. And I think what Rob was saying last week, and what a lot of us who are in the preaching business think, we wish we could do more of it. So what I wanted to do this morning is seek your suggestions about those of us in public religious places, how we can deal with these issues and be true to the Christian message. I think it's a big issue. No one wants to offend someone, but truth is truth. And God's word, to love our enemies, do good to those who hate you, love your neighbor as yourself, are powerful W's. So what advice would you give me as a preacher and Rob as a pastor about how to deal with these issues? Because you brought them up, the Burkes, you brought them up too, didn't you, last week, honey? And the pain it was causing you. So what do you think? What advice would you give me? Yes, sweet love.
Use everyday common examples. I'm thinking of someone has said to me one time, when you're in the line at the grocery store, are you judging the people for what they're buying? Are you making assumptions about things? It's everyday examples that I think we all need.
Okay, everyday examples. So keep the preaching so people really understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, Liz, you can't, as a judge, reflect your political views. That would be really bad business, wouldn't it?
It would be inappropriate.
Inappropriate. Yes, here's a problem right here. Speaking of inappropriate, here she is. Here she is.
I think thank you, Jeff. For me, and it's really what she's alluding to, listening is harder than talking. And I have to put that hat on at least once a day and say, look, you weren't invited here to be the star. You have to sit there and listen. And I think we all need to do more of that.
Okay, more listening. Yes.
I keep reflecting on pre-election and how I prayed about this election more than I've ever prayed about any election. And I think about the Pope's message of choosing between the lesser of two evils. We were between a rock and a hard spot. I think to a degree I alienated my daughter by my vote. but I feel that I voted to end abortion, and in my heart I said, God, you take care of the rest. I'm still hoping that there's a resurrection day at the end of this. That things settle down and come to a peaceful kind of standoff or situation.
So thank you. One of the important things I hear you saying is respect for the person's decision. We have to respect that. And it breaks relationships sometimes, and that is so contrary to the Christian message. Yeah. Phil, what's your name again, Rich?
That's my name, not my name.
Here it comes, Rich.
I think when we're talking about a political issue, the laws have to be followed. And many times the laws adversely affect either individual persons or groups of people. Or say federal spending has to be cut. It's difficult and people are going to be affected. But I think a religious person expressing their views can always help us understand that wonderful expression, what would Jesus do? And there are difficult issues and people are going to be affected, but it has to be hopefully for the greater good of society.
And that is the key, isn't it? Is the action for the greater good? And is there truth behind it? Those are the critical questions.
And I think one of the sad things about what's going on is irrational comments being made that have no bearing on the main issue, but cause complete consternation because, quite honestly, they're stupid statements. They're never going to happen, but it just throws oil on the flames.
Yeah. And perhaps one of the roles of those of us in a position of preaching and teaching is to continually raise questions about truth.
Absolutely.
Truth. But it's not an easy issue, is it?
No.
I say things in my blog I probably wouldn't say from the pulpit. Because I believe them with all my heart about what is happening to migrants without the due process and sometimes the falsehoods around the decisions that everyday people don't have the luxury of exploring them the way we might. So this call for truth, what do you think about that, Ms. Burke?
I thank you for bringing the issue up. I think it's critical. I think that people who preach are in a difficult position. I think they want to help parishioners see the truth, and at the same time respect the right of each individual to form their own opinions about whatever. But I agree with you, Barbara, and I think your simple statement of what would Jesus do is a good thing to keep in mind.
Thank you. Thank you. For us as Christians, it's a critical time, I believe. Bob Pizzatello.
Glad you raised the question. I think what I find is the biggest challenge is really finding a common understanding of truth. And that's something that it's always essential that a preacher never even lean towards telling somebody how to vote. I think that is absolutely verboten, and I have seen it happen in Catholic churches, and I abhor it. It's not proper. So asking the questions that you ask, Barbara, and you've been doing this as long as I know you, asking questions is really the best way to stimulate our conscience and our faith and find ways for them to communicate with one another. The biggest challenge, and I don't have the answer, is that there is not a common set of facts that most people can agree on. Famously, a former press secretary said, well, there are alternative facts. I don't believe there is such a thing. So that is a big problem, and maybe one of the things that people in positions of authority can do is to point to the difference between facts as stated and facts as backed up by data or by peer-reviewed publications where there is not an agenda. But in today's world, especially with social media and the many, many different outlets. You know, when I was a kid, there was CBS, NBC, and ABC, right?
Right.
It's not like that anymore. With all those different sources of information, people in authority in general could point out the differences in agenda of those sources.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a difficult issue. And I think we can be helped if we return to the Word. It is not easy to love your neighbor as yourself. It is not. To love your enemy, we're talking about families that don't love each other. It's not easy. The Christian message is a hard one to live. Thank you very much. This has been a help to me, and I'm open to anything else you want to raise, but I just couldn't let what he raised last week go by the by, because I knew what it meant to him. And I have this is just a smile I get. There are some Christians who want our nation to be labeled a Christian nation. Imagine which denomination we would choose. Talk about a civil war. Will it be the Presbyterian version? Will it be the Lutheran version? Will it be the Roman Catholic version? Or the fundamentalist Christian version? See, our founding fathers were smart to separate our faith from our politics, but our faith must inform the politics. So thank you for letting me bring that up, and Anyway, anybody else, any comment before I scoot on? All right, here comes the microphone, and it's coming closer.
It's not going away.
Say what, darling?
It's not going away. And I think the more we talk about it, the better off we will be.
Thank you. You are wonderful people. I'm going to give you this, honey, just in case somebody on this side. All right. Well, the theme that we established last week, that throughout our life we experience things that we would call a death experience. Small things, big things, but hard things. And so I was trying to say that it's important for us, while we may be not able to answer this while we're going through the death experience, the hard time, but there are resurrection moments, small, some big, resurrection moments. When you and your daughter come together, that's a resurrection moment. And you're going through a Lenten moment right now with the separation between you. And it's good to recognize them, and it's good to know that resurrection moments come. Any comment, any insights from last week that you might like to share, or experience of a Lent or a resurrection moment? Well, maybe they'll pop up as we go along. I was doing a communion service at the Mother House. These wonderful women who just can't get out, and I can. Get the cane in the car, and I'm there. And one pulled me into the pew, and she said, I enjoyed that so much, of what everybody had to say, which is a tribute to you, Jeff, that they all are watching. Sometimes, and we said this last week too, sometimes it's hard for people to move from the painful moment to the resurrection moment. Sometimes we haven't even named the painful moment, or we haven't sought help, or we blame ourselves. But there are always resurrection moments that will come. So what I'd like to do today is take the Transfiguration Gospel and read it to you, and then sort of do what we did last week with the temptations, and see if we can explore the text and what is going on. So I'm going to be reading from Luke. Jesus took Peter, John, and James. Usually we hear Peter, James, and John. I never saw that before. Wonder what Luke was thinking. Jesus took Peter, John, and James and went up a mountain to pray. Mountains in the Hebrew culture were the place where you met God. That's where Moses encountered God. Mountains are big. While he was praying, Jesus, his face changed in appearance, and his clothing became dazzling white. And behold, two men were conversing with him, Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of his, Jesus, his exodus that he was going to accomplish in Jerusalem. Now, there's a ton of meaning in that one, what he's headed for in Jerusalem. Peter and his companions had been overcome by sleep. It sounds like me. And it happened in the garden on Good Friday. These fellas had a hard time staying awake. But becoming fully awake, they saw Jesus' glory and the two men standing with him. As they were about to part from him, Moses and Elijah, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." But he didn't know what he was saying. While he was still speaking, a cloud came and cast a shadow over them, and they became frightened. And when they became frightened when they entered the cloud, that is Moses and Elijah. From the cloud came a voice, "This is my chosen son, listen to him." After the voice was spoken, Jesus was found alone. They fell silent and did not at that time tell anyone what they had seen. Prior to this gospel, Peter affirms that Jesus is the Christ. And going up on a mountain links this experience with many of the experiences in the Old Testament. What's your reaction to this gospel, if you have one? It's been with us for a while, that's for sure. We remember this as a little person. No, I was just... Oh, you would, okay. It's a significant, Moses and Elijah. Moses, the one who was part of that first covenant, and Elijah, one of the prophets. There's a significant that he shares the stage with Moses and Elijah. Moses, for the Hebrew people, represented the law, and Elijah, the prophet. They speak about Jesus' role and what he was to accomplish. One of the things that occurred to me is that as he's launching his public ministry, his links with his faith are deep. Moses and Elijah are there with him. He's not breaking his links with his traditional faith. I think that is a significant piece. Well, why is that? I think Jesus was born, bred, and raised a Jew. And he loved his faith. And his parents did all the rituals they were to do as he was growing up. And they were his teachers. And throughout his history, he said, "I've not come to destroy the law. I've come to fulfill the law." And I bet, this is just Barb now, but I bet if someone asked him when he was out doing his work, "Are you setting up a new religion?" he'd say, "Of course not. We are the chosen people." And what he was trying to do, it seems to me, was call the people back to the original significance of their faith. And it got to the point where the letter of the law, for many, overcame the spirit of the law. The blind man, who sinned? Did he sin or his parents? Think about living with that letter of the law. Last week, at the Temptations, we shared a view by Father McBride that the devil was trying to get Jesus to declare his divinity. Turn that stone into bread. And Jesus refused. He's basically saying, I'm a human being. He was claiming his humanity in last week's gospel. Because you see, if he turned the stone into bread, they would have had him on a throne with a crown in a week. Or if he threw himself off from the temple and an angel popped up and lifted him up. Was he a more? Was Jesus easier? Well, for some, he probably offered them for the first time a message of what it really was like to love God and your neighbor. Scrupulosity, and I've gone through periods of scrupulosity, is a terrible cross to carry. You think you're always doing something wrong. And Jesus, remember, said to them, it's not what you put in your mouth with all your purity laws, it's what comes out. And I think he really wanted to expand the people's view of their faith. That it's not all externals and minutiae. Love your neighbor as yourself. But I think in this transfiguration moment, he is declaring his link with his traditional faith, with Moses and Elijah. In a sense, it's a different reaction from last week. In a sense, he's saying, I'm divine. He's claiming his divinity in this experience. Last week, he claimed his humanity, which is the most profound mystery of all, how you can be both at once. Moses and Elijah disappear, and Jesus remains alone. In a sense, he's on his own now. And so you might raise the question at this point, has he begun to see that the old order has passed away for him and he's called to do something new? To bring his people back to the heart of what God was asking. Peter's response to build the tents, that sounds just like him, was fear, amazement, longing to hold on to the experience. We all have had that. And then the voice. This is my beloved son, the voice from his baptism. In other words, what you get here, that Jesus' ministry is now being confirmed. His ministry, his humanity last week confirmed. And so the question is, does this passage point to his divinity? And did he need that conversation with Moses and Elijah? Because he's moving now into something that's going to cause a lot of pain for him. And so I asked myself, did he struggle with that? Did he struggle with his role in life? How could he not? No wonder he went up to pray so often. And then one of the things that was in that gospel, Moses and Elijah were talking about what he was to achieve in Jerusalem. Well, we know what that was. His death. His death, and then, of course, eventual resurrection. This was a resurrection moment, I think, in a way. But resurrection moments can slide into Good Friday moments quickly, and this one did. And they can move back and forth. Why do you think he brought Peter, James, and John with him? okay, say that, Ruth, into the mic, honey.
He needed community, he needed support to go through this transfiguration moment.
Yeah,
And it's almost like an anointing. So he gathered maybe his closest people, I don't know, around him for that anointing, for that beginning
that'd be
of a new part of his life.
a new part of his life. And it says that these three, for some reason, he felt more comfortable with them, or maybe he realized they needed it, whatever, but he didn't do this alone. And it had to be quite a moment for them and for him. He wanted to share this other aspect of his life. And Peter had already previously come to understand, who do people say that I am? And Peter said, you're the Christ. He was catching it. Not well, to be sure, but he was catching it. And when Moses and Elijah left, Jesus now faces his ministry and what is to come. There must be thoughts going on in heads here. Any comment? The interesting thing, resurrection moments, so to speak, this was kind of a mini resurrection moment, they always end. And we must return to our ministries or our daily life. A wonderful evening out with your family, let's say, where people are on good terms with each other, or some things are just left aside. And for parents, that must be the most wonderful experience, to be with your children and love them and your grandchildren. But that doesn't last. We go back and forth. Yes, honey, Mrs. Burdock. Tell me your first name, love. Pardon? Your first name.
Rosemary.
Oh, Rosemary. You got two big saints there. Go ahead, honey.
What always hits me with this gospel passage is, you are my beloved son. And to me, it's kind of like, this is something about the Trinity. And that's my comment.
Well, it's a good one. You're my beloved son. And that was what was said pretty much at the baptism. What it must have been like when Jesus began to realize. See, some people feel the moment he popped out of the womb, he knew he was divine. I mean, that really, but I have a sense that that gradually came upon him. And okay, honey, but a moment like this must have been stunning for him and encouraging for him as he was about to make his ministry more public.
But intimidating as well.
Intimidating as well. You are my beloved son. Whoa. Sue wants to know that the crucifixion. Oh,
Do you think he knew
what was going to
what
happen
was going to happen when he got up there?
I don't know. But I know going to pray on a mountain was a very common experience. And for some reason, he longed for the company. And why he picked those three, I don't know, but there must have, it's like any human choice. Yeah.
I often wondered what he thought about when he went to bed at night.
Mm-hmm.
You know how so many thoughts go through your mind. And I often wondered, what did he think? Did he think I'm divine? Did he think I'm a man? Did he know how terrible his death was going to be? I mean, what did he think?
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know the answer to that, Sue, but I think. I don't want to make
Neither
it
do
up.
I.
I don't want to make up something. Bishop Matano will be after me if I make up something. I think the resurrection was the moment when he knew this is it. I mean, but I think he must have had a sense. I think he had a real sense that he was in trouble, because the religious leaders, some of them, and the political leaders, Pilate, I think Pilate tried to help him out here, but Pilate served the emperor who was called Son of God. So we can't have another one, and particularly a Jew who claims the same thing. So he had political differences and religious differences with the community. And I think, this is just Barbara's thought, the resurrection confirmed for him everything that God had wanted him to do. And I think he knew he was going to have trouble. And because crucifixion was a common death penalty for people. And yet he kept moving forward. I think, too, see, I'm not going to, well, we're doing okay. I think, too, one of the lessons I gleaned from this gospel is that you and I often have transfiguration moments. We may see ourselves or something about ourselves in a new way. We may see someone else, Rosemary. I've had a transfiguration moment with you. I didn't know you, but now I have a deeper understanding of you. That we have those transfiguration moments with people that are powerful. Anybody else want to speak to this?
What's making me think about is, all I keep coming back to is sacramental. It was a sacramental moment, and we have all had sacramental moments. And
Say more about that, Ruth Ann.
well, when you were talking about why did Jesus bring these three, and I kept thinking of a baptism and the family, and that moment when that child is celebrated and brought into the community and anointed, blessed, and the family celebrates and they go out. It's almost like a transfiguration moment.
Yeah.
But then they go on living
But
their
then they-
family life.
Yeah.
So when you say transfiguration now, all of a sudden I'm thinking sacramental moments. It's just a very holy and something to learn from, to experience, but then go out and figure out what to do with it now.
Figure out what to do with it. To see, oh, here comes Jim. Da. My brother Jim.
Thank you. Well, when Peter, James, and John, Christ took him up to the mountain, and then later on, I think what he was doing is he's building his church, because on his rock I will build my church, and that was Peter.
Yeah.
But I think James and John are certainly a crucial part of that, and I think that was the start of the foundation of his church.
Very interesting. Thank you. And the mystery of the divinity and humanity are mysteries. But the humanity is something we can hold on to because he went through what we often go through. He had his Good Fridays well before the actual one. When the religious leaders, the faith he loved, born into, believed in, when the leaders of that faith turned against him and collaborated with Rome, that had to be a Good Friday before the actual Good Friday. Mr. Portland.
One of the basic principles of the Jewish religion was that a Messiah was going to come and make everything perfect for the Jewish people. And that issue kept coming up during Jesus' 3-year ministry. Is this the Messiah? Although the tradition was much different than the approach that Jesus was taking. And as we know, even after the apostles went out and started spreading the word, the predominant thinking was that to become a member of Jesus' faith, you had to be first a Jewish person. And one of the councils was, and I think St. Paul was leading the charge that any person could join the Christian faith. And it finally had to be certified at one of the what do you call those meetings of the council?
Yeah.
So I've often, in my reflections, say if I had been alive in Judea when Jesus was in his public ministry, would I have jumped on the bandwagon? Because as much as we can sit here and say everything he said absolutely made sense, and a lot of the rules that the Jews had to do, like if a person was handicapped, it was because they had sinned, etc. It still took, it was a big change to go from the traditional Jewish belief to what Jesus and his followers were saying.
Yes, and I think that it had to be a very hard decision for many Jews to get on the bandwagon. They were sincere. We can't judge them for that. But I don't know how I would have acted then. That's an interesting question. Any other comment? I'm thinking of the kindness of God to Peter, James, and John to have this experience, especially when times got rough. And what they saw Jesus go through. Even on Good Friday, they couldn't meet the goal of staying with him to help him. It was difficult. And really, it's the resurrection that confirms all of this. This is the one God sent. So, was this helpful, hurtful, funful? Oh, it is a lot to think about, isn't it? And I think about this story. Eventually, the three, Peter, James, and John, did tell someone because it appears in 3 Gospels. And it was a defining moment. I think each one of us has had moments not like that, but defining moments that help us move from one state to the other. Anybody else want to add, subtract, question? Listen, the check is in the mail.
Yeah, I know. It's not big enough. I have a grandson who is a twin, bit of a obnoxious kid sometimes, but I love him. So we were staying at their house in the basement areas where we stay, and I heard him up. He was upstairs. I heard him up, and I yelled up to him, "Cal, is that you?" And his response was, "Who else would I be?" And it reminds me of this. Can you be whoever you want to be?
Oh, that's good. Who else would it be? But he's got brothers and sisters.
A twin brother.
A twin brother. So, Ruth, what do you think?
Back when Peter wanted to build the tents, what were the tents going to be for?
For Moses, Elijah, and Jesus, so they could stay there.
He didn't want them to leave. Was that the idea?
Well, who would? I mean, when you saw those 3 talking, that's it. We'll build 3 tents for you. It's typical Peter, though, isn't it?
Right. It's like, well, what's this going to achieve? These 3 tents.
And eventually, this story circulated in the early church, and it had to be very helpful. I mean, if you were, for example, I had never thought about this before, if you were a faithful Jew and impressed by Jesus, your choice was a hard one. You weren't sure he was the Messiah, but you loved what he was doing. And this experience might have helped some Jews making that transition, that in a sense, Jesus was being supported by the pillars of their traditional faith. I'd say what, love? It seemed to, that's a nice way to put it, that God sent this delegation. This is my son, believe in him, but he also is a faithful Jew. Look at who's standing around him. So, if Jesus could have accomplished his role and brought all of people together, that's what he was hoping, but it wasn't going to happen because political influences and some religious influences weren't going to allow it to happen.
But did he think there was a chance that it might?
I don't know. Yeah, that's something, and it had to be painful for him because he loved his faith. But what he was doing, remember he said, I didn't come to destroy the law. I came to fulfill it. And you've got yourself in a wrong direction here. You're going after the externals. Wash the dishes, wash your hands, beat about. When in the day, they had to do it to stay alive, to have those purity rules. But they became ends in themselves. And he was saying, the key here is to love your neighbor. It isn't what goes in your mouth, it's what comes out of your mouth that can kill someone. Yeah.
That was one of the best discussions of this topic I've ever been involved in.
Oh, the check is in the mail.
It's kind of like I'm kind of getting it.
You're good. Thank you.
78 years later, I'm finally starting to get it.
Well, think about me, I'm 91. Look where I'm going.
Slower study than I am.
So, I want to thank you all. It's just about 10, 11. I want to thank you for coming. You are a gift beyond compare. Yeah, and it gives me a chance in my aging years. Right, Mike? It gives me a chance. I'm young, mentally young too. So I'm grateful that you came, so many. And for everybody online, thank you so much. Next week, we're going to do the prodigal son. We all fit in that one. And then we have a week off, and then we'll close with a classic, The Woman Caught in Adultery. Get ready. Jeff, thanks a million. Thank you, everybody.